Hello and welcome to The Well. I'm your host, Dr. Brendan Arm, doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine, Chinese medicine herbalist, and founder director of Lotus Integrative Medicine in Santa Monica, California. There's a wealth of health-related information out there, and I'm joined today by this wonderful group of integrative and holistic medical doctors and practitioners to share some of our favorite wellness tips. Please let me introduce you to Bianca Rodriguez, a holistic psychotherapist, Dr. Heath McAllister, a naturopathic doctor and registered herbalist, and Dr. Rob Krochmal, a medical doctor and a practicing physician who is board certified in family medicine, nutrition, and integrative and holistic medicine. So let's begin. Today's topic is social anxiety.
Well, I was excited to talk about this today because as things are beginning to open up here in America, a lot of my clients that struggle with social anxiety are feeling a real resurgence of social anxiety. And so, for you guys out there, social anxiety is just basically a psychological diagnosis where the main symptoms are you have tremendous fear of being negatively judged by those around you. And this isn't just, most of us might be like, oh, I said that, like, did that come off weird? That could be a little miniature form of it, but this is people who actually avoid oftentimes social interactions because the fear is so debilitating. And also then when they're in social interactions, they have really severe anxiety to where they may not be able to really be present. They may kind of dissociate and check out. They may feel so awkward that maybe they freeze. So a lot of my clients have really enjoyed the reprieve that coronavirus has created, in that most of us are being told not to interact with other people and to stay home. So that's a topic that has really been coming up a lot in sessions. What do you guys think?
I wonder though, for those people, we get that break for a year, but then the reality comes back where we are reentering to society. So what's going to happen to them? I mean, it worked in favor for them because society changed for a year, but now it's changed back. So is that coming back? Is that anxiety now resurfacing, or maybe it's coming back in tenfold because they have been distanced for so
Yeah.
long? And how do they work through it?
Well, you've made such a great point because you're like, okay, being in quarantine has worked for them, but really it's worked against them because whenever you have the tendency to avoid something, whether with social anxiety, it's avoiding social situations. With a phobia, maybe you're avoiding planes or you're avoiding going outside because you're afraid of spiders. The worst thing you can do is continue to avoid it. All of the research says that the best treatment is something that's called exposure therapy. And exposure therapy is you don't take somebody and just throw them into a social situation and just be like, just have a panic attack. Good luck with that. Is that you actually teach them skills to manage their anxiety, and then you slowly and consciously help the person re-enter whatever the situation is, in this case social interactions, in a slow and methodical way. But what's so wacky about avoidance is the more you avoid something, the bigger the fear continues to get, and you're more likely to continue avoiding it. And that can actually lead to a full blown phobia or something that's called agoraphobia, which is, a pretty heavy duty group of symptoms, psychological diagnosis, where a person is actually afraid to go outside. They just
Mm.
cannot even go outside without tremendous anxiety. So, oh, my friends out there with social anxiety, I think if you're not working with a therapist, now is a really great time to either sign up with an individual therapist or a support group. There are some great apps out there. I know many therapists are booked, but there's Talkspace and I think it's called BetterHelp that I think give a lot of people more access. So yeah, I think it's a matter of acknowledging that, like, if you've been avoiding something, it probably is worse, but that, it's not a long-term solution to just avoid people.
And what about, is there like a physiological component to it as well, not just mental, emotional? Like maybe there's something that's out of balance in the body. I mean, that's where I could chime in. I'm sure the other doctors want to share as well. What do you guys think?
Well, actually, even before diving in physiologically, I had a question for you, Bianca. Could you give me and the listeners and viewers maybe a sense of what I'm struggling with as we're talking about this? Is there's that pathological aspect of social anxiety, but how does that relate to being an introvert or an extrovert? And because I read an interesting article recently about how introverts are starting to wring their hands a little bit as things start to get prepared to re-enter, and there may be work parties or there may be parties that you get invited to that you may not want to go to. How much of that is just knowing yourself and saying, okay, well, maybe I can just say no to this and it's okay to say no. Or I'm an introvert, and as part of being an introvert, it doesn't mean I don't like people. It doesn't necessarily mean I have anxiety of being negatively judged, the way that we're defining social anxiety. But it may just be that as an introvert, it just takes more energy to be around people. So you like it, but you need to um, have more protected time for yourself, versus an extrovert who actually gets energy from being around people.
Rob, you did a great job. You got it. That's basically it. That's really it. So, right, where's the cross section between social anxiety and introversion and extroversion? And there may not be, those two things are most likely correlated, but they're not like directly correlated, I would say. So, you described it great. So, think about introversion and extroversion. Every human trait is dispersed among the population, usually in a bell curve, right? Remember, guys, I mean, I know you guys, everybody out there, remember that's like a bell curve, right? And most people fall in the middle, and then maybe you have extroversion here and introversion here. And it's really more about where you get your energy, like you said. So some people get energy by being around other people, and some people get energy by being alone. And most of us fall somewhere in the middle. And there's actually a term that's called an ambivert, which is somebody who is in the middle, who gains some energy from being around people, gains some energy from being alone. I'm actually an ambivert. Everybody thinks I'm an extrovert because I am so outgoing, but being around people kind of makes me tired, and I need a lot of downtime, right? So being an introvert doesn't necessarily correlate, like you said, with not liking being around people. It just it probably sucks your energy more, right? After you go out to maybe, like you said, a company party, you're like, I gotta take a nap. I gotta like stay in for the next like couple of days. I gotta just like meditate or read my book or do whatever I'm doing, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you hate going out, and also that you're afraid of being judged by other people. So I think it's important because these terms really are thrown out a lot, I think, in kind of, social media and all that type of stuff. But I do think that people that are more introverted are feeling like, wow, maybe this past year has really been a reprieve because the pressure has been off on the amount of social interactions that you're expected to do. And I know I'm feeling that. I'm definitely like, I kind of like it. I kind of like that there's not a birthday party or an expectation or a meeting or all this stuff in person, and the driving in LA all the time. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how people are going to restructure their lives now that you do have the opportunity to spend more time, out in the world. My hope is that a lot of us have learned that there's a real value in slowing down. Um, and I think another point that you made too is like, really, if you find yourself to be an extrovert and you're new to this concept, make sure that really check in and make sure that your busyness and maybe doing and being around people all the time, is it some sort of an avoidance tactic from being alone? Because what a lot of my clients have found is this past year has brought up a lot of deep core issues to work through in therapy, because there's not the constant distraction of like, I got to meet my friends and I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go, like, you're home. And so the feelings start to rise to the surface. So really thinking about introversion and extroversion when you've either been alone for a period of time or when you've been around people for a period of time, just noticing how much energy you have, right? And that's different from being like, I got to see people, I got to be around people, I got to do that, I got to be like, it's like, if you're doing that all the time, then I would be curious if maybe there's an underlying anxiety piece that you're kind of not wanting to sit with, maybe something, or you're afraid of being alone.
Also, from an integrative perspective, it's we're moving more into spring and summer, which is really a movement from a Chinese perspective, from the inner to the exterior. So this tends to be a time of year when people are moving out of doing that introspective work and starting to socialize, and that actually is working in harmony with kind of us coming out of COVID. Because I felt myself wanting to connect more with nature, wanting to connect more with people. Whereas fall and winter is a time, from a Chinese perspective, where you move from the extroverted component of ourselves and start to go in and start to do more introspective work. Second thing I just wanted to share was, from a Chinese perspective, when it comes to introvert or extrovert or having, social anxiety, Chinese medicine sometimes will break it down to, is this an issue of you standing up to uh, all the voices or all the people that are on an exterior? Or is it an issue of you standing up to those issues that are your own induced, like standing up to yourself? So social anxiety, you could, even though you're going out to a social, exteriorly, there's people that you're now mingling with. You might have anxiety because of exterior influenced uh, um, influencers, or you may have social anxiety because of interior influencers. So we would probably treat each of those a little differently with herbs and acupuncture and lifestyle recommendations. Just want to add that point. Call it yin
I want
chow
to.
and yang chow. You can always look that up online. Yin chow is YINQIAO, is a difficulty of standing up to yourself. Whereas yang chow, YANG, and then QIAO, is more of a difficulty in standing up to the exterior. Some thoughts.
So, my perspective on the whole social anxiety thing, and thank you, Bianca, for like defining it and all of that. I think we're also going to have a lot of, probably we've recruited more people into that group, and that has to do with the fact that people haven't been exercising and they've gained a little bit of weight, and they're like, everyone's like horribly self-conscious right now. Summer's coming, bikini weather, and like so many people that have come through the clinic are like talking about, oh my God, bikini time's coming. I need to lose weight. So like, there's maybe it wouldn't be social anxiety. Maybe that's maybe too extreme for those people, but there's definitely a sense of like shame and self-consciousness that's been engendered by, this big disruption in how things used to be. I would also say that, I have three kids that are, not yet teenagers, and 3, 9, and 12. And how has this affected them? I mean, I've definitely seen on my, like my 9-year-old has withdrawn tremendously. My 12-year-old's like always going to be extroverted, and that's just who she is. But my 9-year-old has really withdrawn, and I've seen, some other kids in that same age range just really be withdrawn and focus more on connecting with things like electronics and video games and things like that. So like, I think we've created introverts and created more social anxiety with our big social experiment that we've just done. Mm-hmm. And, transitioning out of that, some people are going to blossom back into, having some greater freedoms and seeing friends again. Other people they're going to stay stuck. And I think you're right that kind of throwing them out there and trying to jumpstart them and get them. I mean, I think we all do need human connection, whether we're introverts or extroverts. We need some form of human connection. And if we're entirely introverted and we're entirely just connecting through electronics and things, I don't think that anyone can be in a state of health like that. That we need some, do you need 10% human interaction on a daily basis, or are you like a 90% person that gains so much energy? But I don't think there's a 0% on either end. And that, that bell curve is really broad, encompasses a lot of people. I resonate with the fact that I love people. I love seeing people. And if I'm around people 24/7 for days in a row, I burn out and I need my alone time and I need to recharge and to regroup. And so I'm one of those people that kind of likes it both ways. But, and for me, this has been really isolating, and I have felt slightly depressed at times that I haven't been able to connect with people more. And that's like, and I'm an adult with coping skills. And then you take kids that don't even necessarily know their own emotions and don't have coping skills and don't have that perspective. We're going to really have to shepherd them through this whole, social experiment we just did.
I absolutely, those are some great points. I just wanted to say too, we're talking about the introverts and the folks with social anxiety. This has also been tremendously difficult for the folks who really identify as an extrovert. I have a couple of girlfriends that, have really felt really sad and really down because they really get their energy from being around people. So it's also impacted, that group as well. And I think it's also the point you made about kids is, kids are developing their socio-emotional skills. And so how this has impacted them developing, whether maybe they have a propensity to have anxiety, and maybe that could meld into some kind of social anxiety. It's really interesting because kids are really in that space of huge development. And so things that are happening are impacting who they're going to become. And so I think that it's been so difficult for parents. So all the parents out there and all the teachers and all the support people, it's like this has been rough. And I think that it's not just the education piece. I think it's obviously the social piece for kids, as well.
Just, oh, sorry. I was going to say, just to
Go ahead.
touch briefly on your question, Brendan, before we get close to finishing the physiological piece. Just to throw out there, you could kind of consider it as a low serotonin issue potentially as well, if there is a physiological aspect to social anxiety. Serotonin being the neurotransmitter that kind of helps you feel a sense of well-being, and sort of like a cushion, especially for people who might be, more sensitive, more empathic, and feel things kind of deeply. Of course, when we go through this integratively, you're looking at root causes, looking at gut issues. You don't necessarily want to throw a supplement or a medicine at it, but a supplement like 5-HTP, or in cases where you do all that stuff and there's still social anxiety, and you've trying to get tools from a therapist like you, Bianca. There are certain cases where something like an SSRI medicine that boosts serotonin can be very helpful.
So much to unpack here. We haven't even gotten a chance to even bring in, how it influences, say, like an elder population. I mean, there's just so much to unpack, but, and as we have said, that different groups and age groups and populations might be affected differently, but hopefully this has, been somewhat insightful, and we've gotten some ideas of, where to go look for some more assistance if we're struggling through some of this. So thanks for all the perspectives, guys. And that's all the time we have for today. But if you have a topic you'd like to learn more about, let us know with a comment on social media. And also don't forget to subscribe to our The Well YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and please join us next time for more wellness tips. And remember, regardless of where we are, our resources in The Well are limitless.